We call it people technology.
If the folks in Kolkata and the nearby Bengal state needed any more reason to celebrate, because it's anyway Durga Puja, a time for them to celebrate, well, they've got more reason now because their team have made it through to qualifier number 2. And what a dream game it was for Sunil Narain, picking up 4 wickets with the ball and then a quick fire 26 with the bat, but not quite a dream for Virat Kohli, not the fairy tale ending that he'd be hoping for, because we think this is possibly the last game for Virat as captain of RCB in the IPL. Plenty to talk about. You're watching Maruti Suzuki presents ESPN Quick Info T20 Timeout. I'm joined by the usual suspects in Gautam Gambhir, Dan Vettori, and Sanjay Manjrekar. Gautam, I'm going to talk about all the outstanding performances from KKR. Well, let's start with things that went wrong. They almost shot themselves in the foot. You spoke about those poor shots from the RCB batsmen. Similar trend followed by the KKR batsmen.
Yeah, somewhat, especially Nitish Rana at that stage. You would not want RCB to be coming back into the game. They were cruising when Sunil Naran was there to do a job, probably to be an aggressor. You just had to probably keep rotating that strike. And Sunil Naran, anyways, had done the job what he was asked to do. And see, these young players needs to learn very quickly. You can't take this game for granted because, okay, fair enough, you won it today, but then at the same time, if you keep playing these kind of shots, probably you're going nowhere. Nowhere. So yes, Dinesh Karthik again from a seasoned campaigner. You don't expect probably him to play that kind of shot. You would expect him to finish off the game where what less than run a ball was required. But and strange things have happened. Certainly when Dinesh Karthik got out, everyone thought that RCB is back in the game, and you don't want to give a good side an inch. And if you start giving them an inch, probably they can come back to probably hurt you big time. Yes, it didn't happen today, but then there was some reckless and poor shots, even from the KKR batters.
So KKR live to see another day, but Sanjay can't be happy with this sort of batting performance. Outstanding with the ball as they were, but almost choked here while with the bat.
Yeah, our team is made up of a batting side and a bowling side, and clearly their strength is bowling, and they showed high quality performance in that aspect. And credit to them that they got themselves into a great position at halfway time when they restricted RCB, despite the Maxwells and company in their side. Terrific bowling performance, and it's always going to be but we've seen these kind of scenarios a lot in this IPL. Maybe because the season campaigners have not had a great season. A lot of those senior stalwarts who would take the game into the right till the end and win you matches. Those kind of guys have not been in full form, or we haven't seen them this scene as much. So we've seen a lot of these kinds of, average quality games. But in the end, you've got to say KKR when it mattered, won the game. They just had enough. But what a fantastic game for Sunil Narayan. KKR had Sunil Narayan, and that's why they're the winners tonight.
Okay, that leads me to my next question. Dan, as things stand right now, Narain can walk on water, can't he?
Sorry, say Nikhil, you cut out then. Sorry, say that again.
I said, where things stand right now, Narain could possibly walk on water.
Yeah, I think he'll want to wrap up that Sharjah wicket and take with him wherever he goes. So, I mean, he was fantastic. Those crucial wickets, 4 wickets, the big three, big three for RCB, and then to come in and hit those 3 sixes. It just took all the stress out of the game for KKR, and to have a player like that who has the confidence to come in those tough situations, in those pressure situations, and just play his natural game means so much. So his all-round performance was obviously the difference tonight, but I do believe that RCB will be kicking themselves with that 12 to 14 runs that they could have easily manufactured at the back end of their innings to put them in with a score that should have won the game for them.
I'm going to stick with Naren and Gautam. We've seen some real bad number fours being sent in the last 30 odd hours or so. But this call of sending Naren at number four, smart one there by Morgan.
If it comes up, it's smart. If it doesn't come up, then we can criticize it big time as well.
What did you make
Would
of
we
it,
probably bad
irrespective of
bowling?
what happened?
Probably bad bowling. I thought that it was probably one of the worst overs I've seen in an IPL game. Yes, I've seen a lot of bad overs, but then Sunil Ryan bowling that half track of first ball, you don't expect that from a seasoned campaigner who's played what all across the world, and probably who's played more T20 cricket than anyone, to be honest. And giving 22 runs of that one over probably changed the entire game. All you expect him to probably bowl that length a little bit outside the off stump because Sunil Ryan's strength is all probably on the leg side, and you know that he's come to do a job, and you are that experienced. So probably you could have just gone a little wider outside the off stump as well. So I thought that it wasn't the best of overs, and that just changed the entire complex of the game. And to a certain extent,
Sanjay?
let me be very honest with you. I think poor captaincy as well, because Harshal Patel got a wicket one over before. He could have gone to his main bowler, to someone like Yuzvendra Chahal, or for that matter, even to Mohammad Siraj, because pace is pace. And then probably he went for that one over from Dan Christian, which literally changed the game because Dan Christian would have only probably it was never the wicket taking option. Had he got Sunil Ryan at that stage, back to back wickets, KKR would have been under a lot of pressure. So he should have actually gone even to Yuzvendra Chahal, who's having a fabulous run, and probably just because he didn't want to bowl that leg spinner against the left-hander, but a leg spinner, a
Yeah.
quality leg spinner of his stature, could have actually got Sunil Ryan as well.
Just weighing on that, Sanjay, what Gautam talks about, those few bowling decisions. Also, they had Shabazz with them. I know they were lefties on the crease, but he's done decently well with the ball as well. And we saw spinners do rather well. What did you make of those bowling changes and how Virat went about it?
The poor first delivery, and that is all that matters because once he pulled that short ball and with an angle round the wicket, I don't know why seam bowlers also like to go round the wicket and create a nice angle for the left-hander to hit on the leg side. But that first ball was like a wake-up call to Dan Christian, and also, gave Sunil Narayan a lot of confidence. And then he tried to adjust his line and length. There's one ball that he bowled on off stump, a slow off cutter that he almost one-handed, hit for a six. So that first ball was a poor delivery. But you've got to admire the skills and talent that Sunil Narayan has because these were slow balls that he was dispatching into the stand. If not for that over, I tell you what, KKR would have struggled the way, eventually they won. Who knows, they would have struggled to get there.
That experiment by RCB, Dan, it's been going on for some time. Dan Christian, they've persisted with, has been patchy this IPL. The Garden experiment also not working. I agree that probably now was not the right time to make those changes, but these were things that they really needed to look at while they were playing the league stage and something that they just didn't glance over.
Well, I suppose if you think someone like Hasaranga, who had his best to bat sort of 7 or 8 and bowls 4 overs in those conditions, you saw how effective the spinners were. I think you'd jump at that chance if he had it again. I know he didn't bowl that well in his I think 3 opportunities, but these conditions would have suited another spinner. So tricky, but I think you're right. They backed these guys into a situation. They'd been playing good cricket. And they don't expect huge things from the likes of Garden and Christian. They just expect complimentary performances, and Christian has done that all around the world, but tonight he wasn't able to. And I think once he bowled that first bad ball, like Sanjay said, his back was against the wall, and Narayan knew what he was going to try to do from there, and therefore he got on top of him. And those 2 further sixes were just the nail in the coffin for RCB.
Okay, it's end of the road for RCB, so we're going to take a look at all the takeaways for them this season. And I have to start with Harshal Patel. He's tied the record for most wickets in a season alongside Bravo. Gautam, you've been a big fan of his this season, the way he's been bowling. Spare a thought for him not making it to the next step here in the IPL, the way he's bowled this entire season?
Unfortunate. He deserved to be playing the finals, and he's been the standout performer for them. He's bowled some tough overs. I don't care how many wickets a bowler takes. It's irrelevant for me. How many runs do you get? How many wickets do you take? Because sometimes stats can be very misleading. Because I've always rated players who've got those difficult runs and who've got those difficult wickets, and especially bowling those difficult overs. Look at Harshal Patel today. He bowled the fourth over, which was probably the fifth over, which was probably the toughest after Gautam went for what 15 or 20 of the fourth over. Then he bowled in the end as well, in the death over as well. He bowled the fifth over, he got a wicket. He bowled in the death, he got wickets. So he's done probably the toughest thing what RCB was expecting him to do, and he's come out with flying colors. So for me, I think he's been the player, irrespective of how many runs people would get. He's for me the player of the tournament already, because the way he's carried on the burden of death bowling for RCB, which has been a concern for so many years, not only last year but over a period of such a long time. So he's literally handled that pressure single-handedly. So hats off to him, and he's had a fabulous IPL this time.
Sanjay, he calls him man of the tournament for him already. Gautam reminds you of one of those big-hearted cricketers, because it really does take that big heart to bowl those slower deliveries, and with the consistency that he keeps, bringing them up one after the other.
Incredible, considering that this is the very same IPL where he got hit for 37 overs, 37
Yeah.
runs in 1 over by Jadeja. So, my heart went out to him when he had a fantastic UAE leg. He got a hat trick as well, so he's got all the trickery that you need on pitches like this. But the important point, which we have to be honest with, is the kind of surfaces that we had in UAE, where the slower bowlers or the slower balls, the off cutters, the leg cutters were really very effective, and became difficult for batters with those kind of delivery. Life might change a little for Harshal Patel when he gets back on those Indian flat pitches, but talk about using conditions, talk about showing a big heart. It was outstanding.
Two other great performers for RCB this season, Glenn Maxwell. Dan, I'm going to get you on this. One, Maxwell, the most consistent performer that we've seen in a long time with the bat, the way he was performing. And Yuzvendra Chahal needed this IPL, wasn't having the best of times in international cricket.
Well, Chowder first to start with, I think he's back to his best. I think the pace that he bowled and the energy they had at the crease was what he was like a couple of years ago. And I think he's sort of gone to the stage where he's chasing wickets, bowling that wide, slow, loopy leg spinner, and almost bowling six or out balls. Whereas now he's running in fast, he's attacking the stumps, he's using his wrong, and he's got real energy on the ball. And I think in these surfaces, when he bowls like that and he hits his length, batsmen really struggle against him. So it was really pleasing to see him back to his best, and hopefully forcing his way back into an Indian T20 team at some stage as well, because he's such a dangerous bowler. He's such a competitor, and he can do such a job for India or RCB in any situation, in any circumstance. And I think Maxwell was the piece that RCB have been looking for a long time. That middle order batsman who can take on spin. I mean, his play against spin is just exceptional. I think the strike rate of over 160 in trying conditions. He always put pressure back on the opposition spin bowlers who were there to dominate, and he was able to take the game away from them a lot of times. So he will be ecstatic with his performance, because it's been a long time coming. He's really struggled in IPL since he's come into it, and this is his best season by far.
Sanjay, I'm just looking at all things that RCB got right. Virat Kohli got them runs, Maxwell got them runs, Bharat got runs. Then you had Chahal come good in the middle overs. Death bowling was outstanding. Siraj as well as Harshal Patel. I'm wondering, where is it that they lost out?
Virat may have got runs, but it wasn't the kind of match-winning impact that he normally makes. So that is where they didn't have the start that they would have liked. And if they got a good start, they had a good partnership, Padikkal and Virat Kohli in one of the games, and then suddenly they slowed down, and even AB and Maxwell couldn't get them enough runs on the board. So when you look at that whole batting lineup and the bowling lineup, they've made some good calls. This auction, they let go of people that you wondered why would Virat Kohli play or have them in your side. But Virat Kohli's selections, for example, let me take the example of Bharat, who he introduced at number 3, and he played a couple of terrific innings at a very good strike rate. And come the third game, he dropped him down the order at number 7 and had Christian, who hadn't got a run, down on confidence with the bat at number 3 in 2 games. Thankfully, Bharat came back and got runs again. So when you have a team that has a few issues, you've got to be like Dhoni, a sharp captain who makes the most of what you have. And I don't think Virat is that kind of a guy. So when you look at that whole lineup, there are obvious issues there. AB de Villiers has gone off the boil. Virat himself, particularly, not as consistent. But Glenn Maxwell was really covering, all their flaws. And when he got right, I think he was player of the match in 3 games in which he fired, out of the 5.
Okay, I'm going to get into the Virat Kohli captaincy a little later, and we have an entire segment planned on that. I'm just going to stick with one point that Sanjay makes about AB de Villiers, and I think Sanjay, you said it earlier as well, that he's probably not the Superman that we expect him to be. And Gautam, we kept talking about the right batting position for him, and while probably 5 would have been best, but we also got to admit that he may not be as big a match winner or a person who can turn games around within a few balls anymore.
Probably. You got to accept that as well. He's still a human, and then probably over such a long period of time, it has always been Virat Kohli and AB de Villiers. Now this time around, they had Maxwell to probably shoulder the responsibility, and still they couldn't do it. So yes, probably you can say that on the hindsight that yes, AB de Villiers might not be the same player what we guys are used to seeing him do, and he's done that for such a long period of time, but still hasn't won a trophy. So again, probably that wasn't enough, whether it was for South Africa or whether it was for RCB. And he played for South Africa for a very long time. He played for RCB for a very long time. Couldn't still win the trophy for either of them.
Okay, I want both Sanjay and Dan to weigh in on this. No trophy for AB de Villiers. Dan, I'll start with you.
Still time. He's 37. He seems like he wants to play for a few more years. I think the hardest thing for AB is the fact that he's not playing any other cricket. And I think when you saw him at his best, he was coming off a heavy season for South Africa where he was scoring runs across all formats. So he'd come into an RCB camp and he wouldn't train that hard, but he just had enough, I suppose, enough built up through his performances, and to replicate that with time off makes it difficult. And you see how the tournament was split in two this time round. It makes it tricky when you haven't had that high level competition. So that'll be something he'll need to master as he continues to play, because there's no doubt he will. And it'll be interesting to see what RCB do at the auction in regards to retention. But he still has match winning performances in him, as we saw early in the tournament. So I wouldn't count him out yet.
Would you retain him if you were RCB, Sanjay?
Well, just if you have just 3 players to retain, then you're really looking at, what do you do with Harshal Patel? What do you do with Chahal? What do you do with Virat Kohli? So these are tough calls for all franchises if they have to just retain 3 players. But AB de Villiers clearly is not, in his prime. But if he comes back really fired up next IPL, he didn't look as fit as he normally does. And the thing about aging is, if you're carrying that extra weight, it just becomes that much more difficult. I remember Rahul Dravid telling me that the only thing that he focused on in his latter years was just fitness, getting stronger, and keeping as little weight on that, aging frame of yours.
Okay, assuming that this could be AB de Villiers' last season in the IPL, but as Dan says, it could well see him play for another 2 to 3 years. But Gautam, just if you were to look back as AB de Villiers, the T20 batsman, his impact on the IPL, how would you like to remember him?
Genius. That's one word. And I would absolutely say probably the toughest opponent I've played against. Though I've never honestly planned against anyone except Rohit Sharma, but yes, he was probably someone who would actually give you nightmares. Because whoever I've spoken to, some of the bowlers, they always felt that AB de Villiers was probably the toughest to bowl to. That's the reason I would say I've not used this word to many players or probably ever, but he was a genius. He is a genius. He still continue to play. But yes, but as a batsman, as a genius, you still want to have those trophies because that is what you play for in a team sport.
Dan, as a bowler, how was it to bowl against someone like an ABD?
Not fun would be my starting point. I was lucky that every season of IPL I played with them. We played together in Delhi, then at RCB, and then fortunate enough to coach them. So I didn't have to go through too many overs against them in game situations in IPL. I think Gautam's a genius. He's the greatest batsman ever to play T20 cricket. And I wouldn't be surprised if he plays for a number of years, and I wouldn't be surprised if he continues to perform. So I think it's too early to write him off. I think you are allowed a down season, and aging players, you're a little bit more critical of them. But he is that level of talent that means he can come back and he can be a genius once again.
Okay, now I'm going
Maybe
to get
Cricket
into the
Info knows
yeah.
something, Dan, that we don't. Something from the AB
Not at all.
camp.
Not at all. Just as a very responsible media house, what we do is prepare ourselves. If this happens to be the last season, anyone would love to see AB de Villiers play. Okay, I'm going to get into the Virat Kohli captaincy bit because, as Kohli has mentioned himself, that he's not going to be captaining RCB, but he wants to continue playing for that franchise. So we're assuming this is his last season as captain in the IPL, and he started captaining regularly RCB in 2013. That's 8 seasons in total. And Gautam and Sanjay, you wouldn't mind if I spent a couple of minutes just with Dan asking about Virat Kohli, the captain, because he started captaining in 2011. I remember, Dan, when you were injured for a few games. That's when he started captaining a bit. He was your understudy at RCB. But how do you assess his growth? Then you saw him even as a coach while at the RCB. How have you assessed him, his growth, his progress as captain in the IPL?
Well, I think you have to look at it in two different silos, and I think first of all you look at him as a leader, and as a leader, I think he's second to none in terms of his own personal performance, how hard he trains, the standard he sets with his fitness, and then you see him on the cricket field and how much it means to him and how much he cares about the game, that tone, and that inspired so many Indian cricketers. And I think of the time RCB when he first came, well, he was there before me, but once he started setting those fitness standards that everyone followed, and the reason the Indian cricket team is of the standard they are today is because of him. So, as a leader, I don't think you can question anything that he's done on a cricketing field. I think as a captain, obviously it's been tough for him because he hasn't been able to win trophies with RCB. I don't think he's always had the bowling lineup that's allowed him to do that. And I think if you look at most great captains, they have a bowling lineup that they can turn to. And if you look at RCB's seasons, which have been of high performing, it's when the likes of Mitchell Stark's been there, or you see how Harshal Patel's bowled this year. So I think a good captain is enhanced by his bowling lineup. But I suppose to Sanjay's point before is that he can be inconsistent at times in terms of the batting order. You talk about that, and changes can happen rapidly. And if you look at the most successful IPL captains in Dhoni, then they just stick with the same thing the whole time. They don't make changes and they stay as consistent as possible. So if you're looking for ways to critique Virat as a captain, that would be the way. But I think overall as a leader, he has been exceptional, not only to RCB but also to Indian cricket.
All right, that legacy that Dan talks about, fitness, at least that's something that he set very high standards. Sanjay, 3 playoffs I see in 8 season that he's been captain, not even close to the high standards that Kohli himself sets for himself.
I have exactly the same view as Dan. The spirit that he generates on the field, the standards that he sets with not just fitness, the application, the intent on the field. He's a guy who will always believe that there's a chance to win. Even today, when he looked at the celebration when the match was slipping away, he was still believing. And that's where I find a bit of a similarity between him and Viv Richards, who always felt that no matter what, his team had a chance to win. But I've never agreed over the long period that I've looked at his captains. I've never agreed with the kind of team that he picked, because these are teams that you pick in an auction. There was a time in T20 cricket in the IPL, he had a bowling attack of Umesh Yadav, Mohammad Siraj, and Navdeep Saini. 3 guys who were absolutely sort of not made for T20 cricket. Siraj has clearly improved, so he can make those kind of calls. And Dan Christian coming back into his plans, Kyle Jamieson out. So that is where I've never sort of agreed with his choice of players and usage of players. But when Virat Kohli leaves, even when he leaves at some point the Indian cricket leadership of other formats, what you'll miss, the kind of spirit that he creates on the field, no matter what, you play to win.
Gautam, is it going to free him to be a better batsman? He said this himself, that's one of the reasons that he wants to give up on captaincy.
He's only leaving one format. It's not that he's left white ball cricket. So I don't think so. It's just probably he's how many T20 internationals do we play? Hardly. Or how many T20 series do we play? Hardly. It's just that IPL probably for 2 months he's going to be free. Otherwise, he's going to be captaining one day and the test format. So yes, from the IPL point of view, and he's got a longer run. 8 years is a very long time. And yes, Sanjay spoke about his passion and stuff, but probably he was never the best tactician. We never had the probably the shrewdness which a captain requires on the cricket field, because you got to be very instinctive, you got to be ahead of the game. Yes, you will see that passion, you will see that energy, but that's not enough to win you trophies. You got to be a good
Correct.
tactician as well, when to do what, and you should always be 1 or 2 overs ahead of the game rather than just probably going along with the game. And that is what the best T20 captains have always done, always been ahead of the game. And it's not that he has captained India for a very long time. He's captained probably in all the three formats. So I'm sure that from the tactician and shrewdness point of view, he was not right up there as compared to some of the best, probably who's done really well for their own franchise or for the country as well.
Okay, his fans would be hoping that if he gives away this responsibility in the IPL, at least in the IPL, he can be back to those days where we saw he was getting 500 plus runs in a season. But now turning our attention, as Gautam was talking about, it's all about planning ahead. That is something that Kohli wasn't really spot on. But we're planning ahead to the game that's coming up. That's qualifier number 2. Now it's going to be between Delhi and Kolkata, to be once again played at the Sharjah Cricket Stadium. And the one point of discussion that we're looking here is, are Delhi short of a batters? Sanjay, you want to start on this one? Are they short of one batsman? Is that the weak area for them?
See the kind of batter that they have, that they could have a rotten day, because when you look at Shaw, Dhawan, the way he plays these days, you've got only Shreyas Iyer, who will play steadily and calmly. You've got a Shimron Hetmeyer, Rishabh Pant, and it's a point that Gautam made as well. So the only change, maybe out of the box, it could be, is that Steve Smith could be brought in. He's played twice this season, both at Sharjah, so they might be tempted to have the experience and the skills of Steve Smith on a pitch like this in. And they've got a choice of Tom Curran, and somebody that I dare say not South African fast bowler that they could leave out as a foreign player. But Tom Curran on a Sharjah pitch, with the pace that he bowls, could be the option. So that's the only change I look at. Ashwin will continue to play. I don't think they'll take a call of getting Amit Mishra at Sharjah. So I see only one change, but most likely no changes.
Okay, I know, Gautam, you've been advocating that bring in Steve Smith to strengthen that batting order. I'm just taking a look at some of his numbers. Sanjay speaks about him having played 2 matches in this leg. Overall, this season, he's played 7 matches, got 152 runs at an average of 25. Does that give you confidence?
For me, it really doesn't matter now, because for me, I think Steve Smith has to be in, especially on a surface like this. Because if you see the top order, Shikhar Dhawan plays one way, Prithvi Shaw can have probably the best game and probably might have the worst game as well. Shreyas Iyer plays one way, Hetmeyer plays one way, Rishabh Pant plays his own way.
We
So you
don't know
need,
which way.
I don't know which way, honestly. What side of the bed do they in the morning do they get up with on? So don't know. So Steve Smith probably against a bowling lineup like this, against pace and against spin, he plays really well. So I would definitely push him at number 3, and then probably bat around him, because you need 140, 150 on the board. They, with the kind of batting lineup without Steve Smith, they can get to 160. They might just get bundled out for 80 or 90 as well, because that is that kind of a batting what Delhi has. And I'm sure against Sunil Narine and Varun Chakravarti, it's got to be a difficult task, especially for the left-handers as well. So definitely we want to have Steve Smith to put runs on the board.
Okay,
Gautam, which is the
then
foreign player that you'll leave out, because
Tom Curran.
you'll have to
Tom
leave
Curran. I would
Tom Curran.
definitely, I would definitely go with Rabada, Nokia, and Avesh Khan, and I would
But
back
this is
Ashwin, and I would definitely back Ashwin to do the job. If Ashwin can't do a job on this wicket, especially against so many left-handers, then there is seriously something wrong. Then it has to be form, because till now I've always spoken about his mental side of the game. But then if he cannot deliver in a big game against so many left-handers on this wicket, then probably he's short on confidence.
Okay, Dan, I was going to ask you the same thing. One, as the two of our experts have suggested, bring in Steve Smith, then you leave out someone like a Tom Curran. The other option is look to an Indian player, in which case I'm looking at R. Ashwin not having bowled his 4 overs. You bring him out, then you've got a spinning all-rounder in Lalit Yadav, who's played, done decently well. You've got a Ripul Patel, who's bowled a few overs, couple of overs, or sometimes even 4, and gives you the batting option. That's the other option that you can go.
Well, this is the fun bit about being a captain or coach. You pick 10 players easily, and then you agonise for 24 to 48 hours over the 11th player, and inevitably they don't do much in the game. But you've spent that much time thinking about it. You've probably overthought it, and you've probably got it wrong more often than not. And it is a tough thing, and that's why the great T20 teams are balanced, and that's why the likes of Mumbai over the years and CSK, it's easy to pick the team because they have so many all-rounders, they have so much balance to their team. And when they do make changes, it's just for the surface or for an injury. So this is what makes it so hard around selection. So I think I would be looking at Ashwin as if it wasn't for the surface, then his place would come under scrutiny. But I think because of the left-handers, he has to play. And like Gautam, I think I'd bring Steve Smith in for Tom Curran or Rabada because I think you need that batting and the depth of it on a tricky surface.
Okay,
And
so
what's
you're
likely to
leaving.
happen, Nikhil, as Dan said, that they might agonize over one player. What do we do for 48 hours? And then Marcus Stoinis says, I'm fit.
True, true.
See,
That's the
probably
dream.
still, just one thing. Still,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
Marcus Stoinis is fit, I would still not bring him in this game. I would still go with Steve Smith
Okay.
because this is going to be a tricky surface. And if he's not bowling
Yeah.
fit, unless and until he will give you 2 or 3 overs as your sixth bowling option, because on this wicket, I don't know how much is he going to give against this kind of a bowling lineup. Because straight away getting into on a wicket like Sharjah will be really challenging. Steve Smith probably provides you much
Yeah.
more
Good point.
stability and much more variation as well with his batting.
Okay, so just to sum it up, let's not go with a non-specialist. Let's stick with a specialist. Either it's Steve Smith, and of course, R. Ashwin also stays. Okay, enough about Delhi. I'm going to turn my attention to Kolkata, and we're going to talk about Lockie Ferguson. And the question we are asking is he Kolkata's underappreciated gem? He's the highest wicket taker for KKR. Gautam, to you, and considering he's missed a few games, he's ahead of Varun Chakravarti and Sunil Narine in terms of total wickets taken.
You're talking about underrated, probably the bowler of the bowler for KKR. Yes, you can talk about Varun Chakravarti and Sunil Narine, but look at the bowling lineup. The bowling lineup is only looking much more dangerous because they've got Lockie Ferguson bowling at 150 clicks. When they had Tim Southee and Shivam Mavi or someone else, they were never looking that threatening. So this is what speed can do to you. Speed can probably rattle you on any surface. When you're quick in the air, you're quick in the air, and that is the reason why they've got now 12 overs of quality bowling plus Shivam Bavi and Shakib. Imagine if you get Lockie Ferguson out and you get Tim Southee on the same wicket, it's not going to look the same kind of an attack. So Lockie Ferguson is not underrated. Probably for me, I think he's made the maximum probably impact on KKR's bowling lineup since he's got back.
And the figures are suggesting it's not just the wickets that I was talking about. His average is outstanding, even better than Harshal Patel for the moment. What that means, Sanjay, is that they haven't missed Pat Cummins. It seemed like it was going to be a big blow, but Lockie just coming in has even things out.
Absolutely, and I mentioned start of today's game as well. Not just the speed. He's one of those guys who doesn't do variation for the sake of it. It pains me to see, guys who've got pace and they bowl a couple of great delivery shots of playing, and then they feel obliged to bring in a variation, bowl a slow delivery, and they get tonked for a 4 or a 6. So Lockie Ferguson uses his speed, hits the deck a lot, attacks the stumps, and I think he's showing the way for a lot of guys who have speed. That's the way to do it. Attack the stump, use the speed, use the pitch, and don't have to vary if you don't need to.
Okay, let's get a Kiwi to give us some inside knowledge. Dan, I was just looking at his last season. Not great. Picked up 6 wickets in the 5 matches that he played. He's turned it around, similar number of games, but double the amount of wickets. What's really changed for him this year? He was quick even then.
Well, I think he has had a lot of injuries to deal with, and even leading into this, I know he was supposed to play, I think in the 100, and he missed a few games with a side strain. So I think he's feeling fit. I think he's feeling strong, and I think he'll be very clear in his role. I know that Brendan McCallum and Owen Morgan will be very, very strong with them about exactly their expectations with him, and it will be around what Sanjay has said, that is, bowl as fast as you can, attack the stumps, and use your variation when it's appropriate, as opposed to overuse it. And then the Sharjah wicket comes into as well. I always think the quicker bowlers on these sorts of surfaces become even more difficult because you don't get to use that pace to play your shots. That pace just becomes harder and harder to play because the ball's not coming on, but the ball speed is still there. So I think it's just a culmination of a number of different things that he's feeling extremely comfortable about himself, and he's bowling really well.
All
And
right,
crucial
gentlemen, it's
wicket
been
today of Padikkal, and showed Lockie Ferguson showed his value when he came and got Padikkal out at the time that he did in the second over.
That's right. I mean, they were going hammer and tongs, the openers at the time.
Yeah.
But, gentlemen, it's been a very exciting game, a long, long night. So, thank you so much for joining us on this program. A long program as well. Gautam Gambhir and Sanjay Manjrekar. But a special thanks to Dan Vettori, because I'm guessing it must be early morning coffee time for him. But for him to have stayed on with us throughout this match and discussing. Special thanks to you, Dan Vettori. But just a reminder
You
that
that.
this is
See you,
just
Dan.
the seventh time that KKR have made it to the playoffs, but now have taken a step closer to that final. Delhi Capitals will be up next, and they have made it three times in a row into the playoffs, but would be looking to repeat last season's performance where they reached the final. That game would be coming up, but after a day's gap. Thanks so much for joining us. You're watching
Thank
ESPN
you.
Quick Info T20 Timeout that was brought to you by Maruti Suzuki.
We call it people technology.